Welcome to your doom. Shut it and get over here. Massive uppercuts!
Hello and welcome to another edition of the JabJab Show, and today it's story time once again. Now this story is brought to you by Grange Hill Annual 1982. That's what I'm going to pretend to be reading out of. So yeah, I've got a new story and what have you. Pick this up from Charity Shop at some point, this annual 50p or something, I don't know. What is on this page is full of all your great features of all your favourite Grange Hill characters from the early 80s. You've got little photo shoots, you've got profiles, you've got comic strips as well. Series of questions here. I'll give you a quiz on, suggested knowledge on Grange Hill. So this is series 4 of Grange Hill, whenever that was, I don't know. Who were the star turns at the school dance? It's multiple choice. The choices are between A, this is Bright Star and his Twinkles, or B, Sooty and the Sootettes, or C, Throbbing Gristle. Now if you said Sooty and the Sootettes, you'd be right. Don't know. So this story today is called Awesome Pablo Siblings. So make sure you sat comfortably and I'll begin. I won't begin until you start comfortably, so just pause the video, sit comfortably, however you want to do it. Anyway, Master Spanish craftsman Pablo was about a third of the way through creating a 7-foot wooden Bruce Forsyth statue for a posh family when his phone rang. Pablo usually lets his phone ring so he can continue the job he's on, so he's in the zone until the job is done. Especially if it's a well-paid job for posh people, and they don't come much posher than the Jimenez family, who collectively own around 40% of Spain's celery plantation. But times are difficult, as Pablo has just started work again after the virus thing. He can't be picky with his jobs now, so he answered the call. It's from a private number. A stern voice on the other end introduced himself as PC Worldez, a cop. He told Pablo that his wife had been kidnapped and is rumoured to be held captive in a castle somewhere. Pablo knew where this was going. He ended the call, letting the cop know he knows what to do. There was only one man who it could possibly be behind this, Dinosaur Fernando. Pablo and his wife Deirdre have had their ups and downs since getting married 2 months ago, and he's only been sleeping with his sister only twice or thrice, and she has run into financial trouble spending their entire fortune on wine, then getting Dinosaur Fernando, a crooked owner of a castle, to bail her out. Yes, Pablo knew what to do, but he had to honour the job of carving a statue of Bruce Forsyth for the Jimenez family. Despite his indifference towards his wife, he knew he had to honour their marriage, plus it would keep her sister accessible. He called Manuel Jimenez, explaining that he'd just been offered a job in Madrid that he can't possibly refuse from the Torres family, who are even posher. He'll finish the job there, then he'll come back and continue making the wooden late presenter of the Generation game and such like. Amazingly, the lie worked and Pablo was on his way. He knew where Dinosaur Fernando lived, but it wasn't an easy place to get to. Pablo got his toolbox out of his van and was on his way. He had to go on foot, as the journey was going to go down into the sewers and other underground locations, sometimes via a network of pipes. He got his phone to call his wife to assure her that he was on his way. It wouldn't connect. That would make sense if Deirdre was indeed in a castle. Then he realised that he hadn't been given a time limit or information that she was in immediate danger, so Pablo decided to go to his sister's house to see if she needed any wood. He was a carpenter after all. Her front door was open, so he let himself in, but he was then met with a sight of her sister and his brother Leandro in the kitchen on all fours, dressed as Batman and Catwoman. She was Batman. There was a very awkward conversation for an hour before he told Leandro that he was on his way to rescue Deirdre. Leandro told him that he'd join him as Deirdre still owed him a lot of money. So off they went. Pablo was initially reluctant to have his brother around, but it reminded him when they went on adventures as kids, stealing paint and potatoes from old man Ariola's shed. The Weighted Dinosaur Fernando's castle was filled with forests, full of Fernando's fighty henchmen. Pablo and Leandro got into a routine of Pablo throwing one of his cables at them, then Leandro jumping on their head, thereby incapacitating them until they were rendered dead. There were also many tricky jumps and breakable mid-air platforms to negotiate. Luckily, both Pablo and Leandro were more than up to the task. They were both serial adulterers and have vast experience escaping angry husbands over walls and hedges. So as they battled through the network of pipes and flooded underground caverns, finally they made it to Dinosaur Fernando's castle. Leandro lost a leg fighting a particularly feisty turtle. They looked, at the huge castle before them. They shared legends about the place, like how there's lots of fiery, twisty, turny bits and that. It was a long and arduous path through the castle. The legends about the fiery bits were true, and they really didn't understand how a castle could be designed as such. Sadly, Leandro perished as he got hit by a fireball thrown by a big dinosaur. Pablo wondered if it was Dinosaur Fernando, but knew he didn't have the ability to emit fiery projectiles. Either way, it was all up to Pablo. Leandro wasn't going to get his money back. Pablo made it to the lair of the dinosaur, who was still spouting a special spit of flames. He got a good look at his foe, who was now convinced it wasn't Dinosaur Fernando. He asked the dinosaur where he was, but there was no reply. Perhaps it was an actual dinosaur who just didn't understand people. Unlike Dinosaur Fernando, who was just an odd Spaniard in a dinosaur costume. Just then, Pablo spotted a large button behind the dinosaur. He hatched a plan to time his jumps so he could get to jump over the dinosaur and onto the button. By this point, Pablo was very tired and beaten up, but eventually he found a pattern to the dinosaur's actions. He vaulted over the dinosaur and landed on the button. A trapdoor opened beneath the dinosaur and he fell in, really hurt. Pablo slumped to the floor in exhaustion. A few seconds later, a janitor-looking person walked up to Pablo, explaining he had vanquished the powerful dinosaur, but his wife was in a different castle. Pablo got furious. He used all his remaining strength to hold up the janitor to the wall and demand answers. The janitor explained there were 7 more castles to go through. Pablo didn't take long to decide that he wasn't going to bother, given how difficult it had been just to get here, and also losing his brother along the way. He asked where the exit was and let himself out. He planned to go back home, but he'll stop at her sister's along the way. The end. So there you have it, another story there. Let me know down in the comment section down there, what you think to the story and my visual pictorial things, whatever. Join me again next week and I'll have another story. Thank you. Thanks for watching. See you later.